Good evening, everyone. Welcome in to another episode of the Cynthia Manion Show. Tonight, we have the pleasure of diving deep into the stories of remarkable people who are not just shaping their paths, but influencing the world. First, let me introduce the heart of tonight's show, Cynthia Manion herself, a visionary whose conversations light up our lives with wisdom, courage, and the power of transformation. Cynthia's knack for uncovering the stories that matter will lead us into an unforgettable dialogue with our amazing guest, Sharla Frost. Without further ado, please welcome to the stage, Cynthia Manion.
Thank you so much, Eric, and welcome, welcome, welcome. I've had so much fun preparing for this podcast with Sharla Frost. She is amazing. I already knew her for quite a few years, but now getting to really know her and all that she's accomplished is eye-opening. You can learn so much from her and use her for inspiration for what's going to happen next in your life. Sharla, in case you don't know, well, supposedly she retired, but I don't think she will ever believe in retirement, is from Oklahoma. But she did most of her lawyering in Houston, Texas, and in the United States of America, like traveling nonstop all the way around. She's a fifth generation Frogvillian, yes, because she is from Frogville. She is the author of a book on how to develop business entitled Power at the Table, which is currently in rewrite, and I can't wait to get my copy of that, as well as 4 children's books from the Frogville Quest series that we will be telling you about. The first installment is coming up, and you're right here on the cutting edge because that's March 20th. Yeah. Did you know that there is a World Frog Day? I'm so excited. For more than 30 years, Sharla represented Fortune 50 companies in mass tort litigation. And you know all about that. This is an amazing story throughout the United States of America. Among other recognitions, she has a list of who's who and what she won and what she did. And I want to make sure we talk about her debating because that is so cool. She was identified as the 2018 Houston Lawyer of the Year for products liability litigation for the defendant side. And she was invited to join the Texas Bar Foundation in 2023. She is one heavy hitter. One of the few women who has ever done this. I think she might have been the only woman at the time to win this award. She's one of 3 lawyers nationally identified in the Chamber USA Spotlight Table in product liability. I think the other 2 are men. Mass torts nationwide for several years. She retired technically from lawyering in 2020, but she's such a powerhouse that people are reaching out for her for speaking engagements, advice, wanting her to read stuff to make sure that it's up to par, just trying to soak up all of that knowledge that she has from 30 plus years working in this environment. Her current legal practice focuses on high-risk settlement negotiations and litigation strategy to select clients. Yeah, very select clients. She serves as an expert witness. She writes and speaks on topics of business development and business resilience. Let's welcome to the stage, Sharla Frost. Yay!
Thank you, Cynthia.
Oh, you are so amazing. You are so amazing. I'm so happy that you're here. I am overwhelmed with all the things that you have done. And you primarily live, well, your house is in Houston, Texas, yes? And your
That's correct.
ranch, yes, she is a ranch girl, is in Frogville, Oklahoma.
That's true. That's where I am today, actually. Yeah.
And do you actually go out and milk the cows, or you have a whole staff?
Well, it's a cattle ranch, and it's beef cattle. So we have what's called a cow-calf operation. And I grew up on cattle ranch. That my parents and grandparents, apparently it runs in the family. So that's what I've done virtually all of my life. Not while I was practicing law, but all the rest of the time.
And that's why she's so young and invigorating. Out in the country, getting that fresh country air, and your family's all close when you're in Oklahoma, living up in a generational place.
Yeah.
Getting all the wisdom from, I think you said, your aunt and uncle and your grandparents and your cousins.
I have a fulsome family. So yes, I'm lucky. There are lots of people in the neighborhood.
It is amazing. Is that your dream place? Is that your favorite place? Like that's where you want to stay forever?
It is probably my restful place. I am sort of an itinerant, so practicing law everywhere suited me well, and being in one place doesn't really suit me all that well. So I like bouncing around, but home base is definitely here at the ranch.
And I know you like Paris, as in Paris, Texas.
Well, I was born in Paris, Texas. So I like to tell people, je suis né à Paris, because I was born in Paris. But I also love Paris, France. It's probably my favorite European city. My French is terrible, but I've found that the French are fairly forgiving if you give it a try.
It's true. It's true. They're lovely. Are you going back? Are you going and visiting? Have you got plans to travel now that you're, quote, retired?
Well, I call it retoolement. I have refashioned myself, but yes, Paris is definitely on the list. Skip is my significant other. We were planning to go to Germany in June because he is going to speak to a German conference on aviation because he's a pilot and he does flight instructing, but that has gotten bounced to the fall. So instead, we're going in June to Las Vegas so I can learn more about how to do speaking.
Excellent. 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 I think you should be on stage everywhere with all of the things that you can talk about.
Oh, you're too kind.
I actually can't wait to see you speak. I will be there because you have so much knowledge, and I like going, whoa, should we go to the law side or should we go to the fiction side? Should we go to the book side? Do you have a preference at this moment? We've got Eric on.
I really don't. I tell people I have adult ADD. I have lots of things going on at any one time. So any one of them you want to talk about is great.
Well, since I mentioned Frog Day on the 20th, since you told me about it, I did bring my little friend.
That's terrific.
You have your princess and your queen.
Yes.
So here's a little frog jumping ready for Frog Day. We'll just jump into books for a minute because she has the 4 books. Actually, that would be 5 books now.
Right. Yeah.
So your first book, maybe Eric will put it up there, is Power at the Table. This is the one that I'm waiting for the rewrite on. But this is a pencil and paper, get down, figure out who you are, and why don't you tell us about the new one coming up and what you're doing?
Yeah. Well, Power at the Table was sort of the start of this whole process. And I had done a lot of business development training for the lawyers who worked for me and for colleagues around the country for a long time, because law firms expect lawyers to develop business, except they don't train you to do that. And law school doesn't train you to do that. So it was a lot of trial and error on my part. So I decided I'd write the book I wished I'd had when I got started. And after I wrote that book, the publisher I was working with at the time sat me down and said, "What did you think about the process?" I said, "Yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. I was an English major and I was the editor of the college newspaper. I liked to write. So writing seemed fun, but I didn't really have anything else that was just driving me in the way that the Power at the Table book had." And it was during COVID, and he said, "Great news for you. The only thing that's selling is children's books. Have you ever thought about writing a children's book?" And I said, "Well, no, I don't have children. Why would I write a children's book?" And he said, "Do you want to sell a book?" And I said, "Well, if I write one, I'd kind of like to." So we wrote the first children's book. And that was fun. So we weren't quite finished with the story. So we wrote the second one. And then I wasn't finished with the story. So we did the third one. And I've just finished, put the finishing touches on the fourth one. And it is a combination of Norse mythology and the Wizard of Oz, because Wizard of Oz is now out of copyright. So I can use it as inspiration. But that's been fun too. And if you look closely at the books, you'll notice they all come from a different literary standpoint. The first one's truly a fairy tale. The second one, which you're holding up, is a bit of the Arabian Nights. The third one is Irish fairy tales. And then this fourth one is Norse mythology. And it gave me the opportunity to do a bunch of research because I go back and reread things since I haven't read some of those things in a really long time. It's been fun. And on the fourth one, I used AI to do the illustrations. I never could find an illustrator, and my publisher and I looked for an illustrator. We wanted something very similar to what you're holding up, and that person was no longer available. So AI to the rescue.
Wow. This is going to be exciting. I can't wait to see that. So who do you credit when you do that?
The ones you're holding up were done by a specific illustrator, and that's reflected on the front of the book. For the AI ones, you have license to use those commercially if you create them. And we created them and then refined them in Photoshop. So it was really sort of a two-stage process. And when I say we, I mean Ken Walls, because I can't use Photoshop. I've had it for years and it's growing dust on the side of this thing.
I love this one.
Yeah. You like my frog girl?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. And Lily becomes more human-like through the course of the stories, because one of the learning lessons that I'm trying to impart, and for those of you who haven't read the books, my protagonist is Lily Pad Lotus Dillweed, known as Lily. And when she was 13, she turned into a frog because of a curse on Frogville where she lives. And she's going on a series of quests, first to lift the curse on herself, and then to save her friend, and then to help with some other things. But it's important that girls understand that being 13 is really terrible, whether you turn into a frog or not. And part of the concept is to explore some of those ways that we develop over time and what it's like to evolve from your 13-year-old self to your 14 or 15-year-old self.
And friendships?
Friendships, yes. Her best friend Cassie gets turned into a stone at the end of the first one. And she is on a quest to get magic water to release her in the second and third ones. And in the fourth one, they're on their way back to Frogville, but they've gotten lost.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Ooh. And that's the one that's coming out on the 20th?
Correct.
I'll have to get that one too.
Yeah. I think you'll like it. It's fun.
I enjoy these immensely, as a matter of fact. I was like, oh, these are so fabulous. And I already have a couple of ideas for you that will all tie together. So here you are now, kind of almost in childhood, helping people and children figure it all out, because now we've got bullying and the internet and all these things, and they've lost a lot of the magic. But you have a heroine who's a female. You have friendship and love being just as important without needing necessarily a partner. You can get friendship of all different kinds. I love that concept. Do you want to speak about that a little bit? Because that is so needed in our world right now.
Well, one of the things that I really wanted to do with these books, after I sat down and thought about, if I'm going to write a children's book, what would I write it about? I wanted a female protagonist, because most fairy tales, the female is either the victim or the bad girl. Or maybe a sidekick, but rarely really the primary character. And Lily is our primary character, and she is a nice kid. She is a traditional kid. Things like family are important to her. Friendship is important. And she learns that love can be friendship. It doesn't have to be romantic love. So the importance of developing friends and maintaining them is something that I think is important for all of us. And like you say, that's not really much of a focus in our society these days. So it's a learning lesson that I think is important.
It's a beautiful lesson. And the quest, having a goal that you are both going for, or a purpose, a mindset that you want to achieve, and going on it together, and the obstacles that you go over is such a beautiful concept.
Teamwork is always lovely. Yeah.
Yes. You learn so much, and you grow and you grow, and you are amazing in that area as well. I love this whole thing when you started your lawyer business, but I think maybe the audience who doesn't know you might need a little background here of
Okay.
growing up. So why don't you go into that so that they can follow our thread into how this is all evolving?
Well, I grew, like Cynthia said, like you said earlier, I grew up in Frogville, Oklahoma. And I tell people that we were way out in the country. We were 13 miles from a loaf of bread. And that's no kidding. That's how far it was if we wanted to go to town or we wanted to buy anything. So our closest neighbor was a quarter of a mile away. And that was my aunt and uncle. A half mile away was my grandparents. And then as you got closer to the 13-mile point, there were more relatives. But I went to public school, one that wasn't particularly well recognized for good academics, but it was a great education, and I had wonderful teachers and great people that were my classmates. I went to college at Southeastern Oklahoma State University. Me, Reba McEntire, and Brett Butler, who played baseball, and let's see, who else? Reba. Oh, Dennis Rodman. Can't forget Dennis. Dennis was actually there when I was there. I knew who he was. I didn't actually know him. But I went to school there, and I was on a full ride academic scholarship, which was life-changing for me. My parents would have made sure I went to college. It would have been a much harder thing because Daddy was a railroad engineer and Mama ran the house and the ranch. So paying for college would have been a bit of a struggle. But as it was a full ride, and they paid room, board, tuition, books, everything. And we had special classes together. It was an honors program. So I had exposure to really bright, highly motivated kids that are people I probably wouldn't have encountered otherwise. I was an English and speech major. I wanted to go to law school. When I was a senior in high school, my high school principal was a retired, used-up lawyer. He liked teaching. He didn't like practicing law, but he also liked kids, and he didn't really like the politics that go with education. So he usually lasted 1 year at a time wherever he went. And I just got lucky. My senior year, he showed up in our school, and I got a call during summertime before my senior year that I had an appointment with the principal at 2:00 on Wednesday. In the principal's office, my life, much less during the summertime. Why was I going? But he had gone through the files for all of the students for the high school. He was a lawyer. He was used to going through files and analyzing stuff.
Nice.
And he met with all of the students. And he asked me what I was going to do. Was I planning to go to college? And I said, yes, I'm planning to go to college. Well, what are you going to do? I'm going to be a secretary. And he said, you're going to have a secretary. You're not going to be a secretary.
I love this guy.
He was terrific. And he taught a law class at the end of the day during school day. And he said, great news. I've signed you up for my law class. It's like, I don't know that I want to take a law class. No worries. You're signed up. So the end of the first semester, he sat me down and said, look, you do good enough work. You could make an A in law school. What do you plan to do? And I said, I thought we had this discussion. I'm going to be a secretary. But he was familiar with this academic scholarship, and no one at the school other than him was. So he insisted that I sign up, and it was highly competitive. They awarded 16 per year, and they had lots and lots of great kids who applied. And I was very fortunate to get it. But because I got it, I got the opportunity to do all sorts of things in college because I didn't have to work. So I was on student government. That was great. I quickly decided politics wasn't for me. I was on school newspaper and ended up as the editor my senior year. It's true. Yeah. And I got to debate. And
I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, well, the debating was really kind of fun. I'm walking down the hallway in the Fine Arts building one day, and I look up and I see this poster that says full ride academic scholarship, Baylor Law School. Footnote, former debaters. Okay, I've never seen a debate round, right? But I marched into the debate coach, who was one of the professors in my field, and said, I'd like to debate. And to his credit, he said, where did you go to school? And I told him, and he said, I don't think y'all have a debate program. And I said, we don't have a debate program. And he said, well, why do you think you can debate? I said, well, my roommate's a debater, because she was. My boyfriend's a debater. His best friend's a debater. It can't be that hard. And I think back on that and think, I can't believe I said that. And more than that, I can't believe that his response was, we're having a meeting tonight. Why don't you come check it out? And so I did. And that I was a sophomore at the time. And I still vividly remember my very first debate round. I was so excited. We had gotten through it. I thought we'd done a great job. The opposing team was me and a guy. And to this day, I cannot remember who my partner was. But I do remember the other team. It was a man named Mr. Schlar from Louisiana State and his partner. And in those days, they didn't really care about this whole triggering thing. Hurting your feelings, not really a big issue. Oh. So the coaches and the judges at the end of your round critiqued you in the round. And the graduate assistant from the University of Arkansas started her critique by saying, you two women have the worst accents I've ever heard. And I remember standing there thinking, oh my God, I must sound really, really bad if she thinks that I do. So I went back to campus on Monday and marched into the rhetoric professor, who was notorious for not liking women. He was an old school misogynist. And I said, I apparently sound like I crawled out from under a rock. Would you please help me? And to his credit, he did. And I continued to debate. And at the end of my senior year, I applied for that scholarship, and off to Baylor I went.
Yeah. You are adorable and amazing and smart. And where did all your confidence come from?
My parents. Yeah.
Good foundation. They
always said I could do anything I wanted to.
And look at you go.
Yeah.
And you did. I'm going to just say shout out to Eric. Friendship is extremely important. True, authentic friendship is priceless.
Yes, it is.
It gets you through.
And not only in my books, but in my life. Friendship has been one of those things that you really just can't say enough good things about.
I agree. I wouldn't be anywhere without my girlfriends and my support system, male and female across the world. It's
right.
Okay, so we're in debating and you're winning stuff. You're amazing. You get your scholarship. I really want to hear more about the debating, but I'll have to have an offline conversation with you so we can dive in.
Okay.
Amazing. So you graduate and you become a lawyer. Did I skip a few steps that you want to mention?
Well, there was that whole law school thing. Baylor is very competitive.
Oh, yes. Please go there. Please go there first.
But Baylor specializes in training trial lawyers, people who are going to go in the courtroom. And I thought that if I was going to practice law, that's really what I wanted to do. And I had a great law school experience too. My moot court partner and I, and moot courts pretend appellate court. We won the school competition and got a 2-week trip to England, which was—
Of course you did.
Yeah.
You did.
Now, the good news is we didn't kill each other on the trip. We were moot court partners. We were not dating or anything. I learned very quickly that if you're going to go on a 2-week European trip with someone, they really ought to be family or romantic. I mean, one or the other. But the good news is we didn't kill each other, which apparently there was a betting pool, as it turned out. But law school was great. And I was fortunate I did well in law school. And I ended up going to work for Fulbright and Jaworski in Houston, which at the time was one of the 3 biggest law firms in Houston, really among the largest law firms in the country. And that was a good experience, but I didn't realize how difficult that connection was going to be, because there were more lawyers and employees at Fulbright than lived in my entire county back in Oklahoma. So that wasn't a perfect fit. And I ended up going to a Fulbright spinoff right about a year and a half in. And that was one of the best things that could have happened to me. It was small. They did really cool work, and they let me do really cool work, which was even better. So it turned out, as a third-year lawyer, I was responsible for 5,000 cases.
Ooh.
And I was too dumb to realize that I didn't know what I was doing and shouldn't have been doing that. But they were special kind of cases. And I just did what I needed to do. And then I got the opportunity to do some of the trials. And one thing led to another. And I just kept doing trials.
And this is a strong work ethic. This is a strong get up and get her done, the passion to jump out of bed and do that day after day for how many years? 30 something? Here's your friend Shirley Harris, excellent Sherman, but make Sharla.
Yeah, she's mom too.
Oh, hi. Nice to see you.
Yeah,
she's amazing.
Her husband and my dad worked together. So we grew up, my sister and I grew up around her 2 boys who are almost 10 years younger than us. But yeah, she's terrific.
Family support, friends, friendship, family, FF&F, a winning combination to be as fantastic as you are. So anyway, so here you are, you're at this particular law firm. And is this where you said it was the pyramid kind of thing?
All of them are. That's sort of the way that law firm finances work. You need worker bees at the bottom, management people at the middle, and then the people at the top are usually the ones who either have the business or have the clients, and it's their business. They're the partners who run the place.
Okay, so this is we're on law firm number 1 or law firm number 2 now?
This would be law firm number 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now the big one.
Well, then I went for law firm number 3. A buddy of mine that I got to know while I was doing hearings and trials in Houston was a former partner at that firm. And he told me one day, you want to come work for me. And I was like, I don't want to come work for you. I'm having fun doing what I'm doing. So the day that I called him and said, I'd really like to come work for you, he was pretty good and didn't say I told you so. But I went to work with him at the third firm. And after about 18 months, one afternoon at 2:00 in the afternoon, I remember it vividly because he didn't usually come into my office at 2:00 in the afternoon and say, want to go have a beer? I was like, it's 2:00 in the afternoon. Why would I? Okay, we'll go have a beer. What do you want to talk about? And we get there and we go to the usual watering hole and we sit down, and I'm thinking he's going to tell me he's had a life crisis, or he's marrying the new girlfriend. There's something up. And he looks around very furtively and leans forward and says, I want to leave and start a law firm. You want to go with me? I'll give you 50% of the equity. It's like, okay, when do we start? So that was the beginning of a 20-year law firm relationship. And Jim Powers, who was the partner, Jim and I were more, you couldn't find people a lot more different, but we always agreed on things and we came out in the same place on things. And we were known coast to coast as Jim and Sharla. If you wanted somebody to defend an indefensible asbestos or other toxic tort case, just call Jim and Sharla. One of them will be dumb enough to show up.
Or smart enough.
Yeah.
Or bright enough.
Yeah, so it was great, and we had wonderful clients and got fabulous opportunities. So that was one of the best 2:00 afternoon beers I've ever had in my life.
Eye-opening, amazing. And this led to?
From there, after tort reform, because tort reform went through Texas like Sherman went through Atlanta.
Yeah, so wait a minute. So is this the one? Did you open another law firm with your sister, or is this the one that she joined?
My sister was at Powers and Frost.
Oh,
So
okay. So this is where she's. Okay, so go into that a little bit before we jump forward.
okay. Well, my sister actually worked there before I did. She was already working for Powers when he convinced me to leave the second law firm and come work with him. And then when we left to start Powers and Frost, she came with us. She was one of the lawyers and the work team who came with us, and she was our partner throughout the process, and then went with me and the rest of the crew when tort reform shut us down and we needed to find a new place to go. So went from having almost 50 lawyers before tort reform to we were down to 8. And I did a pitch for some work with a company that I had done work for before, and we should have gotten it. It was work that we were eminently suited for, and I would have been the trial lawyer, and it was a trial that I would have been able to win, but we didn't get the work. And I knew the guy well enough. I called him afterwards and said, okay, didn't hire me. Did I spit on someone in the interview? Is there something I need to know? And he said, well, the problem is your firm is now too small. And for the kinds of risk that we're talking about, I have board of directors that I have to answer to, and I just can't hire you. You need bigger. And I said, well, if it's truly an issue of size, I can control for size. And I went out and interviewed firms, some of which thought they were interviewing me, but I was actually interviewing them, to figure out where we were going to take our people. And we went from 8 lawyers to an 800 lawyer law firm. And I was managing partner of their Houston office. And it worked until my oldest, biggest client came to me one day and said, you got to move somewhere else. Don't care where, but you can't stay there. So I went and looked for another firm and made that change. And that's where I was when I reached the point that I was ready to retire. I had done as many trials as I wanted to do, and I was never going to be a judge, not what I want to do. There are only so many cases you can defend and so many verdicts you can get. And I was just done. I was just ready to do something different. So I retired. I'm going to write a book. I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to do all kinds of stuff. And COVID hit. So what do? And for me, that was you finish up the first book and then you write children's books.
You have lots of joy and you bring joy to others. But let's fill in about your sister.
Oh, yes. My sister, who's 4 years younger than I am, is also a lawyer. Unlike me, who was planning to be a secretary, she had always wanted to be a lawyer from first grade onward. And it's interesting because we didn't really know anybody who was a lawyer. I wanted to be a secretary because my mother's middle sister was a legal secretary and she was just terrific. So that's what I thought I wanted to do. But Gwen, my sister, had always wanted to be a lawyer. And I tell my parents that they had one kid who can read and one who can add, because she's all math and science and that sort of stuff. And she can visualize things and then make them. I can visualize things and maybe I can buy them, but I certainly can't make them. But we worked together from 1994 until 2020 when I decided to retire.
Wow. And what's she doing now?
She is doing a general civil practice in Houston and in Oklahoma. She recently relocated back to Oklahoma full time. Our father passed away in the fall of 2022. So she decided to move back up here full time. And she's doing a general practice. She does some litigation, she does some real estate, she does some wills and that sort of thing. And she really enjoys it. She's having a ball doing it. And she sews, she's a quilter. She makes beautiful quilts. I
Yeah.
can't sew a straight seam, and she makes creative quilts. So, go
The
figure.
yin and yang of the family.
Right.
You got
Yeah.
your math and your creative going together, and you're
Yeah.
artistic. And does she ride horses?
She does, although that's not really her favorite thing to do. It's my one and only athletic accomplishment. I got chosen last for every sport in school, and I've come to grips with that because I was terrible at every sport in school. But I do love to ride. And in fact, I'm interviewing a horse over the weekend because
You
I don't
are.
currently have a horse.
What kind?
Good question. The nice gentleman who bought cows from us recently has the most adorable sons, and the little boys are, I think, 7 and 9, and they rodeo, and they have outgrown their current rodeo horse. It's no longer powerful enough for them. So he's going to sell the horse. And I said, "Oh, that sounds great. I'd love to have a horse." So he called and he said, "Do you really want a horse?" And I said, "I really want a horse." And he said, "Well, you can come interview this one and
Yeah.
see if it suits you." And I told him, I don't want a horse that I can get hurt on. So I may really need a stick horse, but that remains to be seen. But he assures me that this horse is one that would be safe for me. So I need to go meet the horse.
Yeah, you have to see if the horse chooses you.
I think so. And Jill Walls had found a horse for me.
Yeah,
I was
Jill's
really
right.
excited about it. Unfortunately, it turned out to be sick. So yeah, that one didn't turn out well. But this one is apparently a younger horse, and it's used to dealing with small children. So I'm at least infantile enough. Maybe it will like me. We'll see.
Yeah, that's exciting. That'll be fun.
Yeah, it will.
So now let's hit on how hard that you worked and what you did and how you were never home because you were always on the road. And Gwen is the other. Oh, this must be your sister's Gwen?
It is.
The other side is Sharla. Bright, sharp, motivated, great pair. Well, I would also use those same adjectives, Shirley, for Sharla. Bright, sharp, motivated, resilient, enchanting, amazing, keeps going, never stops, probably will never stop working, and loves it.
Yeah.
Loves it. And so you traveled, what, 30 years you were living in hotels?
Pretty much. Probably the first 10 years of my practice was local. More of it was Houston or South Texas area. But from that point onward, I was doing trial work and doing it all around the country. And as a result of that, I was on the road all the time. I had several years where I traveled 300 nights a year. I was always gone. And that was one of the reasons I was ready to give that up. There are only so many hotels you can stay in and so many bad room service meals you can have when it just becomes time. But for the kind of cases that I handled, particularly after tort reform in Texas, those cases were not local cases. And I was fortunate that I had clients who were willing to let me go to foreign jurisdictions, as we call it. So I tried a lot of cases in New York City. I tried cases in Los Angeles. I went to trial in rural Mississippi. I went to trial in Atlanta. I tried cases literally all over the country and had a great experience doing it. I litigated both with and against some really amazing people. You learn to appreciate the quality of the people that you're battling for and the ones that you're battling against. So it was a great ride. I enjoyed it. I was just ready to be done with it.
But it's laying the groundwork for your speaking going forward because there you were and you had an audience of 100 people you didn't know, picking out your new best friend. And tell us about that jury selection. How did you figure out how to do that? That seems like the ones up in where were you? Vermont? Where were you in the? You were in the East Coast.
I did some in Connecticut. The Baylor trial program, which is mandatory for all of its law students, included a component on jury selection. And that, frankly, was always my favorite part of the trial. 100 people I don't know yet. So an opportunity to talk to people. But if you have good people skills, you can deduce a lot from people by asking them questions and seeing how they respond, to you, not just to what it is that they say verbally. And then in addition to that, I had clients who hired amazing jury consultants, PhDs in psychology and anthropology and all of the ologies. And they worked with us as lawyers to help us refine what we were doing in the courtroom. And they would help us with everything from questions to profiles. There's a lot of demographic information that's available academically about what's persuasive to people and what is not. And so you learn what it is you're looking for in order to get an unbiased jury. Because I was always a defendant. I'm never going to get a jury that's really for my corporate client. That's not really how things work. But what I need is someone who's willing to give us a fair chance and listen to what we have to say and evaluate the evidence. That's the way the process is supposed to work. So that was just an amazing process. And it's different in every state.
Really?
Amazingly different in every state. In Texas, you get this 100 people panel all at the same time, and you're asking them questions, and you go down the row one after another until you run out of time. And a lot of judges, I think, unfairly limit the time because jury selection is so important. Contrast that with, say, Connecticut, where you are entitled to individually question everyone on the jury panel for as long as it takes for all of the parties to agree whether they are keeping that person on the panel or not. And then there are states that use what they call the six-pack method. You take that 100-person panel, you pull 6 people out, put them in the jury box, and you question those. And if you take someone off of the panel, then you replace them with someone from the audience, and you start asking them questions. It's a fascinating subset of practicing law, but lots of lawyers don't like it. It's not efficient, but it's so important.
Yes, it makes or breaks the case.
It
Dun,
does.
dun, dun.
Yeah, it really does.
Ooh, and this is giving you unbelievable grounding for whatever platform that you're on, from 500 to 5,000 to 50,000 and more when you go and speak.
Yeah.
Because you've already got a command of the audience and you can read the audience, right? So you'll pick out your best friend there to speak to and then feel the other ones, whether they're with you or not, and mold your talk. How it goes. And now look at all the things you can speak on. So how do you decide? You tell you body language. You said you ask them if they like you or not. When if they'd be a good person to be on your.
Well, you're asking if they can be fair and impartial, because that's really the criteria, and that's the technical answer. The real answer is it's sort of like speed dating. Do they like you? That one doesn't like you. I remember picking a jury in Fort Worth, Texas, not long before Christmas, almost 20 years ago. And I always remember my jury panel. So I remember where this guy sat. And I've been asking questions, and it is clear this guy doesn't like me. He just doesn't like me. Don't know why, don't really care, doesn't really matter, but he doesn't like me. So I'm trying to figure out how I can do the question that elicits him saying that so I can get him off the panel. And so I asked a question that I often used in jury selection, which was, okay, we're going to be together for 2 weeks or 3 or 4, however, depending on the trial. And you've been really great about answering questions about my client and what you think about it. And I want to ask this one follow-up question, because it's so important to my client that they get people who are fair and impartial. Sometimes jurors will say, there's not anything I don't like about your client, but I really don't like you. You remind me of that girl I sat next to in 6th grade. Didn't like her, don't like you. And that will hurt my feelings a little bit, but it's okay. So is there anyone on the panel who feels that way? And I can see this guy sitting there trying to figure out what he's going to say. And he raises his hand. And I said, yes, Mr. Smith. I don't remember his name. What would you like to share something with me? And he said, yeah, actually, what if it isn't that I don't like you, but I just don't like lawyers? And I said, that's lovely. I really appreciate you sharing that with me. And the plaintiff's lawyer struck him for cause. Now, the plaintiff's lawyer was asleep at the switch because he liked the plaintiff's lawyer just fine. He just really didn't like me. But he was gone. Gone was fine. But you can tell if you have any sense of how people react to you and react to others, you can tell from body language a lot of things. Now, you can't always tell. I picked juries with a great friend of mine, wonderful lawyer out of Corpus Christi named Mike Terry. And Mike and I, again, couldn't have been more different. He looks like Charlton Heston. He has this big, deep voice. He's Mr. Male, and he's just lovely. And we discovered after picking 3 or 4 juries together, there was a certain type of juror that just didn't like either one of us. It was consistent from panel to panel. Why? Didn't really matter again. Those people didn't like us. So by the time we picked like the 5th jury, it's like, that one's got to go. You could tell on the front end. But jury selection is both art and science.
I once interviewed a guy, Renee Dominique, who is a body language person. He has a whole book out.
Yeah.
And you probably have a good handle on body language as well.
You learn a lot about it. If you're paying attention to it, but there's not anything really different about that in a courtroom setting than just a human setting. We meet people that we bond with. We meet people that we don't bond with, and learning to recognize those, but not consider it to be judgmental because they don't actually know you. It's not personal in that sense. And as long as you can divorce yourself from having your feelings hurt by the fact that these random strangers that are never going to see you again didn't fall in love with you immediately, it's okay.
Yeah, that's a good thing to get rid of for your life anyway.
Right?
Yeah, if
exactly.
you wouldn't take their advice, why would you listen to their opinion?
That is true.
Eric said something good. He said, look at this one. One of the coolest experiences I had as a young adult being picked for a juror where the crooked lawyer was the defendant.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to talk to him about that later.
Exactly.
Oh my goodness. So you were an amazing lawyer. You won more than you lost for sure. And that award you got in 2018.
That was really cool because that's voted on by your peers. I had no idea. I get this thing in the mail that says, congratulations, people like you. Yeah, I felt like Sally Fields. They like me. They really, really like me. But I made a point during my professional career of treating people professionally, whether they really deserved it or not. And I considered my adversaries to be adversaries. They are not my enemies. And I worked really hard to do things the right way. One of my frequent plaintiffs' adversaries told me once that he thought I did a better job of picking my fights than anybody else he knew. So I didn't fight about the stuff that didn't matter. Didn't help my client, didn't help me. And I think that's an important aspect of the profession that we really ought to spend more time on because it makes a difference. It makes a difference in life. I wish our politicians followed that rule. No, don't fight about the stuff that doesn't matter. Figure out what it is that's really important. And those are the things that you need to be fighting about and fussing about.
That could be another book for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. And then talk about your stellar record for the IRS and the FBI going through making sure that you're a good person for the Supreme Court.
Well, It wasn't for the IRS or the FBI,
I
but
know that's just an analogy of how much they go into all of your business.
yeah, they do. I say that when I got licensed in West Virginia, that it was like a combination of an IRS audit and an FBI background check, because I didn't take the bar there. I did what they call waiving in, and you have to do this unbelievably long application. It would probably have been easier to have taken the bar, frankly. But you have to list every judge you've ever been in front of, every lawyer you've ever practiced against, every person you've ever worked for. And apparently they like send things to all of these people to get reviews and recommendations. And I'm sure that someone could easily derail you on that. But I had to go for an in-person interview with an interviewer from the state bar. And I had to laugh. He said, I have no idea why anyone wants to waive into West Virginia to do the kind of trials that you do, but apparently you do. And does everyone love you? It's like, well, no, but why do you ask? And he said, I did not get one single bad response.
Ooh.
All of these people. And I said, could you give me a list of who you sent it to? There's got to be somebody out there. But they do go very in depth and look at those sort of things. And they wanted every apartment I had lived in since college. I had to do a lot of digging to find some of that stuff, but it was just amazing. It's an incredible amount of information.
It's wonderful you have all those records now.
No, I didn't get them. They got them. You don't get a copy.
You don't get a copy of all of that?
No, it's confidential to the bar. So other than telling me that he didn't get any bad ones, I have no idea who any of them were.
Well, they'll find you now because they'll be going out to get your books.
Yeah.
For their grandchildren and their children and their children's children.
Mm-hmm. Actually, some of my best purchasers to date have been some of the plaintiffs' lawyers that called and told me, I bought your books.
I love that.
Cool. It's not going to matter, but it's cool. I appreciate it.
It's very cool.
Yeah.
And your little bracelets, your little lily bracelets.
Yeah. I have bracelets. I don't know what I've done with my bracelet, but there's a great company called Wristband Brothers. And I do not own anything Wristband Brothers Investments, but they do these great little arm bracelets. And I have Frogville Quest bracelets that say follow Lily, Frogville Quest. And on the inside, they have the link to the frogvillequest.com. And I've been giving them out to people. They work great for advertisements.
And her books are available on Amazon. Eric, I don't know if you want to put up her website and where she can get the other books. There she is, very easy, sharlafrost.com. You can't miss it. And, Amazon delivered this to me like last week, and I was like, I should have ordered it before, and I turned around and it was there. I was like, this is amazing. Of course, one of yours it was like a longer delivery date. So I listened to it on Audible. Audible is wonderful. Audible is wonderful. And do you have a photographic memory?
No, I have a pretty good, I call it contextual memory. I remember in general how things work, but I would have killed for a photographic memory. That would have made my life a lot easier.
Yes, for everyone. So you are a very healthy person. You've been living through those hotels for 30 years, and you still manage to have that country glowing skin. And I know you don't like to work out, and you're going to get this new horse, but what else do you do? What's your secret to youth?
Clean living.
Clean living.
Yeah. No, it's all good genetics. There's nothing else to it. I've always thought that exercise was fairly bad for your health. Beyond that, I try to eat well. I try to sleep well, but my bad habits are minimal, and I've just been fortunate.
Yes, because you're absolutely amazing. And before we close, your favorite restaurant? I know you're a foodie. What do you like? Are you Are you into beef and steak? Or are you into seafood or
In
French?
Italian. I love good Italian food. During the pandemic, my very favorite restaurant in the country closed. A restaurant by the name of Griffone's on 46th and 2nd in New York. But it has been revived as Il Tonello. Il Tonello East, I think is the name of it. And wonderful manager, a guy named Benny. But that's probably my favorite restaurant in the entire country, next to the Fort Townsend Depot Steakhouse, which is the local steakhouse location closest where the ranch is located. And Chef Judy and manager Kathy do just an amazing job of bringing really nice cuisine to kind of a place that doesn't have a whole lot of cuisine. There aren't a lot of restaurants in the southeastern part of Oklahoma because it's a poor area and there's not a lot of industry. So they have one of the few white tablecloth restaurants in this part of the country. And Skip and I spend a lot of time there when we're here in Oklahoma.
Sounds lovely, 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 lovely. We have a new Italian restaurant that just opened in my area. So if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, we'll have to come. Their sister restaurant is in Florence.
Ooh,
I haven't tried it yet. They just opened and I'm like so excited, but I had to wait. I'm waiting for kind of a special occasion. I don't want to just, go.
Yeah, I tell people in my next life I'm going to be one of those fat old Italian women because I love Italian food. How can you do better than red wine, fresh pasta, and wonderful desserts? Yeah.
So you'll be doing a podcast for the opening of your new book, Quest of the Sword?
I am going to do a podcast. I'm actually planning to do a podcast based on the business book. It will be the Power at the Table podcast. And I have everything put together, including a list of people to interview. And I have been so busy this first quarter. I testified in a trial, so I do some expert witness work. I've done some very intense settlement negotiations. It's just been one thing after another. So sometime before the middle of the year, Power at the Table, the podcast.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. But Quest of a Sword we'll be talking about.
What day or time do you have, or you haven't booked it yet?
Haven't booked it yet.
Okay.
Probably going to do weekly with advance interviews and then post them each week, but that remains to be seen.
Yeah, I'm doing this Go Live thing under Ken Walls's guidance, and it is so fun though, because it goes out and it's like you're real. Like right now we are live and saying thank you to everyone that joined us. Any questions? Jake says water, drinking water. You'll have to read these books, Jakes, because the whole thing is about the water that went bad from not taking good care of your neighbors, not being a kind person. In closing, do you have some words, some quotes that you like to live by? I have one. I am a person through whom and for whom exceptional things happen and occur on a regular basis. And I got them from Glenn Morshower.
I was going to say, that sounds very Glenn-like. So I don't really have a particular slogan, but I liked what you said earlier, and I have used it myself, which is, if you wouldn't take their advice, why do you care about their opinion? Because I think that that's true of many things in life. But I have been fortunate. Life is good for me. And I expect that life will be good because it always has. So there are always complications, but you can live through them. You just have to keep moving.
And that is the quote of the day right there. You just keep going. Try to go through the bad parts faster and savor the good parts a little more and take time to enjoy them. You have to let us know what's going on with your horse.
I will let you know. Yes.
Okay. Are there any questions out in the audience, Eric R? Oh, Eric F says, amen.
Eric
Amen,
is
amen,
such a
amen.
great guy.
Fabulous and such a good supporter. I adore you. I adore you so much. I'm so happy. And Nick's doing well. He's still open, and we are so blessed. Thank you for all the prayers and thoughts and good wishes that you send to him and for his ongoing journey. And thank you, Sharla. It's so wonderful that we have so many people in common that we know. It's been fabulous talking to you. Can't wait to have a glass of wine or a cup of tea or a water with you at the next event.
Yes.
And see you when you have your next podcast and open your new book.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. And don't forget, National Frog Day. Ribbit, ribbit.